Hello and welcome to Ray of Light, the podcast about reading, writing and happiness with me, Eleanor Ray. To open season 2, I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Holland. Sam is best known for her award-winning thrillers that plunge straight into the darkest corners of human behaviour. Her debut, The Echo Man, shocked and enthralled readers, me especially, and I'm a bit of a wimp, with its serial killer copying real-life murderers, followed by The 20 and The Puppet Master. Her newest novel, The Countdown Killer, is out now. She also writes brilliant and ever so slightly gentler police procedurals as Louisa Scarr, including a new series featuring a police dog, but it is not at all cosy, although it is glorious. So really, what better way to kick off your New Year's resolutions than with an author who specialises in brutal serial killers? Today, we'll be talking about why dark stories grip us so tightly, whether there's room for lightness amidst the horror, and how Sam creates such unsettling worlds. Sam, welcome and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. It's a delight. Now, I'd love to start with your latest novel, The Countdown Killer. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
So The Countdown Killer is something that I've wanted to write for a while, and it starts when DCI Cara Elliott is working late at night and a DVD is dropped off at the front desk, and she watches it and she quickly realizes that it's a snuff film. So it's someone being killed live on film. So the team look into it. They quickly discover who dropped it off. It's a woman whose husband has died. He was a documentary filmmaker, and he left behind this terrible legacy of this DVD and then 14 others. And they quickly recognize that there's a pattern. So somebody is identified, they're abducted, and then 48 hours later, they're killed. So this is the pattern that they recognize. And then when the killer realizes he's being looked for, it quickly turns personal. So a detective is then abducted, somebody of their team, and they have 48 hours to find him.
So exciting, but I'm getting scared already just hearing about it.
It is deliberately supposed to be quite scary and quite, it drags you along. I always want to have a pace that drags you along with it. So
yes,
yeah, they're good fun, I think.
With your novels, even though they terrify me, they're very dark. When I finished The Echo Man, I slept with the lights on for quite a while. What draws you to writing these disturbing corners of human behaviour? What do you love about it?
I don't find it disturbing. I find it quite fascinating. And it's the interest in what makes somebody do these terrible things. So, it's essentially the same. We have the same cells or what have you, but something in their makeup or in the environment that they're brought up in means that some people go away and do these absolutely awful things. And it's digging into that and trying to look at the why that I find the most interesting.
Well, certainly, it's very compelling, and it is a very interesting area to explore why people do these really extreme things. Do you think there's space for lightness or maybe some relief even in those dark stories?
When you look at very genre stories, so mine are the serial killer thrillers, that's the genre they fit into, and you can only have plot or character. Some people often say you can't have both, but I think that's absolute rubbish because obviously it has a plot, it has a very strong hook, but also I think the lightness can be found in the characters and how they got on with each other, how they interact with each other, because that's the fun part for me when I'm writing it, is they're in these extraordinary circumstances where they're investigating this killer, but it's how they react to it, how they lean on each other, that I think is really the most interesting part. So in these books, you have Cara Elliott, who is the main detective, but then her brother, who's called Nate Griffin, works in the team with her. And the way they interact, I think, is fascinating because obviously they're brother and sister, but then also the other members of the team there's a woman in this book who Griffin is starting to have a bit of a relationship with. And you see another part of him that you wouldn't necessarily have seen before. And it's how these people develop and these characters develop, which I think is the light, I guess. And there is humor. I mean, it's not a comedy, but there is a very black humor to the books. And one of my favorite things is they're having a conversation about female serial killers. And one of the pieces of research is that female serial killers tend to come into their own later in life. So sort of perimenopausal or menopausal. And Cara's response to that is like, well, that's something to look forward to. It's quite dark, but quite funny in that way. I think there's a lot of black humor to be found. I mean, policemen do have a very dark sense of humor, and I think that I try to draw that out in the books.
Yeah, I love the dark humour in your books, actually. It's very wry. It's very well done. And you do really good banter between the police people as well. That's a lot of fun to read and does give that little bit of relief which you need sometimes when things are going quite dark. And you see the friendships building and the romance building, which is a nice counter to people going around killing each other.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that The Echo Man is basically two love stories, but with a bit of killing in between. So yeah, I can't resist. There's always an element of romance and people, people getting on and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And so yeah, I can't resist. There's always romance in my books, even though it's crime.
Two love stories in The Echo Man. Goodness, two love stories. How many murders?
Oh, 30 something. I can't remember now.
Wow.
About 32 or something. Like, there's a lot. There's a lot of people die in The Echo Man.
A backdrop to some
Yeah.
love stories. Lovely.
Yeah, exactly. It's all, yeah. But I think this
It's a
is,
setting.
but people do. I mean, even in the most disastrous circumstances, people do meet and fall in love and fall out of love and all that sort of thing. So I think it's just reflection of like human nature, really.
Yes, yes. You've got a lot of readers. Why do you think they're so fascinated by horrific crimes, both in your fiction and in others? What keeps people turning those pages? What do you think people love about those dark sides of things?
And it's something I've sort of looked into at great length and tried to find a reason for. There's the theory that I think holds, I put most stock in, is by a professor called Professor David Wilson. He studied serial killers. And he says that when we watch a film or we read a book, we're looking at the story through what he describes as a protective frame. So we're at home, we're on our sofa, or we're in bed or whatever, and we're all nice and cozy, but we're getting to experience sort of the horror and the fear and the revulsion, I guess, but in the safety of our living room. And that sort of juxtaposition is quite cathartic because I think a lot of my readers are women. And I think as women, we experience that sort of fear just walking down the street, at night or getting into our cars. So to be able to experience it in a safe way and sort of work through it, I think is catharsis. So it's, that's my kind of reason. But also, I think they're really good stories. I'd like to think that mine are really good stories, but a lot of these books are really good stories. And, we're drawn into it and it's escapism. And also at the end, usually the killer is caught. So there's justice. Not always in the case of my books, but usually the killer is caught and there's some sort of happy ending to the horror that you experienced, which you don't necessarily get in real life.
That's so interesting. The thrill of experiencing something so awful, but in such a cozy way, almost like kittens play fighting or something like that. It's just kind of experiencing something, but not having to get hurt. So you're a little bit of an expert in murder. What do you think makes a great fictional murder? And maybe if you were going to do it, what would you do?
What makes a good fictional murder?
You're being recorded,
Yes,
so
I
we will
know.
play this back.
I have to be careful that I don't do anything. So I've been asked the question quite a few times, believe it or not, so how I would commit the perfect murder. But I think the key is to not make it look like a murder. So it looks like an accident or a suicide or just a missing person. So because there's so much forensics nowadays, it's very hard to avoid getting any of a forensic trace on a body or anything like that. So I think you have to either make it a good reason why it's there, and so why your trace is on somebody, or you just make it so they don't ever look. So it's an accident or something like that. So somebody dies in a way that they don't dig too deeply. That would be the perfect way to kill them. But in fiction, I think it's just something that has a lot of layers to it. So it's not what it looks like on the surface. So it's not a simple stabbing or whatever, but there's layers, whether that's what's happened, whether that's the character or what's happened or anything like that. You need to have a lot of things to unpick for the detectives to get their teeth into. And I think that's what makes a good murder in fiction.
Certainly makes a very interesting read with lots of twists and turns. Brilliant. Now, you also write crime as Louisa Scarr. We were talking before about the little bit of romance, even in The Echo Man, quite a lot of romance in The Echo Man. But your Butler and West books have a wonderful romantic tension to them that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed that more than the crime elements, really, although the crime provides like this fascinating plot. But really, I was reading it for that romance. Was that fun to write? Is that something you enjoy?
Yeah, I do really enjoy writing a romance. But the thing is that you get to know the characters. So in Butler and West, it's Robin Butler and Freya West. So over the course of 5 books, they at the very beginning, they don't know each other at all. And then something that happens in Last Place You Look, which means that suddenly they do know each other very well. And it's that sort of arc of how they slowly get, because it's very rare that you meet someone and you suddenly get together and that's it, in real life. So I wanted to sort of show how slowly they were coming to like each other and then like fall in love with each other. So, and it's a real joy to do that over 5 books because you have so much time to play with. And as when I went into, so my latest series is the PC Lucy Halliday series. And when I went into that, so there's Lucy, who's the main character, but then she's a dog handler and she works with Jack, who's a DI in the major crimes team. And I went into it saying, right, it's going to be a platonic relationship. I'm going to show how these two can be friends. And I'm on book 4 and it's just not, I can't resist. I just can't resist. So I don't want to give any spoilers, but they, between in the first 2 books, they get to know each other very well as friends and look after each other. And then it all starts to turn a bit in book 3. So yeah, I just really like writing about romances.
I've had a few romance authors on the show recently. And in a way, how you do it is a bit more freeing, maybe. When you write a romance that is your plot, you have to know what's going to happen. They meet, they might fall out, there's some conflict, and they get together in the course of a novel. Whereas you've got 5 novels and an awful lot more plot, an awful lot of stuff that happens. So they really get to know each other, even in very extreme circumstances, which I think actually it's a brilliant setting for a romance to develop, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's great fun. So each book has to have a crime. It's a crime book at the end of the day. It has to have a crime. And actually, that's what I really enjoy as well. So they have to get to know each other within the scope of each book has a crime and has its own plot. And then, yeah, I think you can kind of let things evolve a little more naturally. You don't have to have the same arc, I guess, that you have to have in a romance, but that people expect in a romance book. So you can have a little bit more fun with it and a little bit more fun with the characters. But then you have to remember it is a crime book and I can't get too carried away, which I have a tendency to do and get hauled back in by my editor. So.
Brilliant. And you've mentioned your new series, the Police Dog books. Can you tell us a little bit about where that idea came from?
I have a spaniel. I have a he's a cross between a Cocker Spaniel and a Springer. So he's an absolute bundle of energy. And I've shoved him out of my office because I was worried that he would bark. Anyone that's got a spaniel will know they're very high energy. He did not sleep as a puppy. So my dog trainer suggested that I take him to scent training to basically tire him out by giving him a job. It didn't work. He loved it, but it didn't tire him out. But it did get me thinking about what about a police dog handler? And you could write a series based on this. And I mentioned it to my agent and he said, yeah, that's great. So that's where Lucy came from. So she's a police dog handler. She has 2 dogs. She has a general purpose dog who is a German Shepherd. So the track and attack ones that you often see at demonstrations. And then she has what's called a victim recovery dog or a cadaver dog. So she has a spaniel who looks for dead bodies. And the series starts when she's sent out to look for a dead body, but she's also got a missing husband and she thinks that the body that they found is her missing husband. So it's all kind of tailored in, but over time it's evolved. She hasn't got quite so much trauma at the moment anymore, bless her. So yeah, but the problem with police dog handlers is they don't actually investigate crime. So you have to have somebody there who's part of the murder team. So that's where Jack Ellis comes in, who's very different from Lucy. So Lucy's quite chaotic, quite messy. She likes nothing more than running about in a wood with a dog. And then Jack's very controlled, very neat, very sort of slightly obsessive. And it's the contrast between the 2 of them, which I think makes the books really interesting.
Love how you make sure that things are right and they're correct according to the police procedure. So you can't, even though it'd be very convenient to have your dog handler investigating crimes, you make it so that's not the way it is. It's more true to life than that. How do you write that police angle so authentically?
I have a couple of police friends who help me out. So I've got a very good friend who is retired now, but he did everything within the police force from sort of response and patrol to murder detective to undercover. So he'd done everything and he is a great source of information for me. I often just sit down with him and his wife is a 999 control operator. So she knows things from the other side. So I'll sit down with both of them and they'll tell me this is how you, whatever, which is great, very helpful. I do now have what I call my dog man. So he is a police dog instructor, so a police handler instructor. So he trains, obviously, policemen and their dogs. He used to be a dog handler and now he's retired. He does the instructing. So he knows everything there is to know about police dogs. And he's been great from a technical side. But then I have other people in my family. So I was talking earlier today with my step-brother-in-law, who's an anaesthetist, and he often corrects and talks me through sort of the medical side of things to get that right. And then I've got, my sister-in-law's a pharmacist, my stepsister-in-law's a paramedic. So luckily they're all really helpful. And I've got a lot of people that I can sort of call on when I need to ask questions. Because I think it is important to get as much right as possible. The story is the key, but if you can get as much as possible correct, then it just feels a bit more authentic, I think.
Absolutely, and you'll certainly do that. It sounds like you've got a really great group of people around you for a crime writer.
Yeah.
How did you get started? Can you tell me a little bit about your writing journey?
My journey, yes. So I have no qualifications in English whatsoever. I did all science at school. I studied psychology at university. I always was an avid reader and I always wanted to write, but I didn't think it was a proper job. So I got worked in recruitment and in HR for 15 years essentially. And then I started writing. I wrote a book while I was off on maternity leave. I really like the idea still, but the execution was terrible. So it got rejected by everybody, which is fine. I look back on it now and go, yeah, you should have rejected that. And then I wrote another one later, which became my debut. And that I sent out to agents. I got some interest. I got an agent through that. Then we worked on it together and then we sent it out on submission and that got picked up by Orion. So that was my very first book. And then it just kind of left from there. So I did some freelance editing work, but mainly I was a full-time writer sort of from the beginning. Because I was very lucky that book did get picked up. Not for like, millions or anything, but it was something. And it gave me the emphasis to keep trying. So yeah, I've been sort of writing solidly since then. So I've been very lucky, really.
Brilliant. And you are really disciplined. You write several books a year under different names to tight deadlines. How on earth do you manage that?
I never stop, I think is the key. So I think when I gave up my proper job, when I gave up my job in HR, I wanted to sort of show that I was working. So I just, and I love it. This is the thing. I really love writing. So I would love nothing better than to be sat in my office writing. So whenever I finish a book, I literally carry on and I sit at my desk from 9:30 till 3:30 when my son's bus arrives. And I write. I do have time to write three books a year, which is quite a lot.
3 books a year is amazing. I manage one every kind of 12 to 18 months is as much as I can do. But yeah.
I think I've got a short attention span as well. So if I work on a book for too long, I get a bit bored of it. I write very quickly and then I edit very quickly.
With it.
Yeah, I get on with it and just crack on. And and eventually, even when you think, oh God, this book is never going to be turn right, it does in the end. And suddenly you realize the best feeling is suddenly you think, oh my God, this actually works. So the book I just gave in is the book 4 in the dog series. And it was such a mess. And I wrote it in such a chaotic fashion. And then finally it all came together. I just thought, oh, and that is the best feeling, I think, when you've been editing and suddenly you think, yes, this is what I had in my head at the beginning that I wanted it to be.
Oh, yes. No matter how many books you've written, you always think this is going to be the one that is never going to come right. So when it comes right, such a relief.
It's great. And to be honest, I was a bit ambitious because it's about a bomb in London and I know nothing about bombs. And you can't Google bombs without getting into trouble, basically, without ending up on a watch list. So I made up a lot and then I was put in touch with a guy who used to work in counterterrorism and he helped me a lot. So yeah, I did think, have I bitten off more than I can chew with this one? Like I can do murders, but can I do bombs? And so yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. It's interesting with your research because I've been talking to a couple of people who write historicals. T. Kinsey, who writes historical murder mysteries, and Annie Garthwaite, who writes about the War of the Roses, but from a woman's perspective. And they both say with their research, the story comes from the research. They do their research first, and then where the story goes from there. Is it the other way around? Is it story first, and then you fill it in with research, or does it vary book to book?
It varies. So I know what the book wants to be. So I knew this was about bombs in London. So I did a bit of research before I went into it, I read a couple of books, finding as much as I could. The problem I find is if I do too much research, before I write the book, it informs, the book gets too heavy. Like I want to put it all in. I want to use all this wonderful, interesting stuff. So And you can't if you want the plot to keep moving. So I do find that usually I'll write the bones and then I'll say, I need to research this and this and this.
Yeah, and I do it the same way. I do enough so that I have a rough idea where my story is going. So for See the Stars, for example, which is my most recent
Mm.
book, it's about someone who's really passionate about astrophysics.
Mm.
And I did a little bit of research at the beginning, but then I wrote the book as I wanted to write it. And then it was once I'd written it that I went back and thought, right, actually, I need more colour here, 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 and here. And luckily, my son's really into space. So we went to lots of planetariums and did some stargazing and things, visited some telescopes. And then I have a friend of a friend who works for the European Space Agency. So she very kindly read the book and then gave me some pointers. And she was like, do you want the space based on where they are in this time of year and this year? Yes, I'd love that. So she helped me make sure everything was as accurate as it could be, which was brilliant. But yeah, I can't, if I do too much research, I'm like you, then too much goes in.
Yeah.
And you want it peppering it rather than everywhere.
It needs to be enough so it feels authentic, but not so much that you just get
Yes.
bogged down in it.
Now, from bombs back to plotting, I've seen your post-it plotting, and it looks like a murder wall.
Yeah.
You have a very elaborate system. How does it work? Can you tell us a little bit about how you plot things out?
Yeah, I wish I was more efficient. So I wish I could, as you mentioned T. Kinsey, so he plots everything out. He's got a big spreadsheet. He plots it all. And I wish I could be like that, but I just can't see the story until I'm writing it. So I generally write a really horrible, messy first draft, which makes zero sense and nobody can ever read because they'll just look at it and go, what is it? It makes no sense whatsoever. And then I have to go back to the beginning, and that gives me an idea of what is the story? How does it flow from beginning to middle to end? Who is the killer, for example? I don't know that when I start. And then I go back to the beginning and I use the index cards to plot it out. So I always write from different points of view. So I have a different color for each point of view, and then each card represents a chapter. And then I have little post-it notes, which are sort of the clues related to each thing, each plot line.
Yes.
So then I plot it all out completely, and then I go back and rewrite the entire book from beginning to end, slowly making it make sense and making sure everything's in there. And it takes me probably about 4 run-throughs until it's right and I can give it in. So it's very much a very messy, very inefficient process, but it does work, and it's the only way it seems to work for me.
Now, you've told us a little bit about your process. What do you find the hardest part of writing a book, and how do you get through it? Is it the post-its and the and the index cards?
That's the bit that makes the most sense. I think it's the first draft. So the first 20,000 words or 30,000 words are always the hardest. And I always just have to tell myself, just keep swimming. So I've got it written on a board up here, but it's generally, it is my motto of just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep going. And it'll all come right, hopefully at some point.
Which bit do you like the most? What's the most enjoyable part of writing a book for you?
It's the editing. So when finally things are coming clear, so it's probably some point towards the end of the second run through, probably around. So the third time I go through it, it's normally starting to sound to be what I want it to be. So yeah, it's about that point. That is, you can see the end in sight and when I give it in,
yes,
and I'm usually pretty pleased with it, quite proud of it when I give it in. So yeah, that's a really good feeling to say, look, here it is, and I love it. And if you don't, tough luck, sort of thing. So yeah,
brilliant. For anyone out there who's listening who would like to write a book but maybe hasn't yet, do you have any tips? What would you suggest?
It's quite old advice, but read a lot and write a lot. So read, if you want to write a serial killer book, read a lot of serial killer books. So, but when you're starting out, you need to know what conventions your genre has. Like, for a crime book, you have to kill somebody, or you have to have the crime in quite an early point in the book, like first chapter, second chapter. And then my other one would be Save the Cat. So I didn't discover Save the Cat until I was like 5 books in, maybe, and it would have been really helpful to have it from the beginning, because I think it's a great structure. You don't have to stick it to it. You don't have to be a slave to it, but it's helpful to feel the beats and feel how a story moves. So yeah, they'd be my 2 bits.
Yeah, I really like Save the Cat, actually. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's an approach to writing. I think it was originally for
It
screenplays,
was,
but it's
yeah.
been adapted to novel writing, and it just gives you a kind of a series of beats or points that most books should hit, and exactly how you do it is obviously it's up to you. Every story is completely different, but it is very handy. I find it useful when I first start writing, when I first sit down and write, right, I've got an idea, but I need to turn it into a book. I'll sometimes kind of go through what would be those key moments, how would I hit them? And then I try and forget about it while I'm writing so I don't get too tied to it and it doesn't feel like a straitjacket. But then sometimes after I've written, when I'm going through and doing my edits, it's like, oh, that bit's a bit slow. It's like maybe I'm missing one of the beats. And that can be a really useful editing tool as well, I find.
Yeah, I've got it on my board at the moment because I've just started writing a new one. So it helps to give some sort of skeleton to the book.
So, moving away from our books and writing for a moment, are there any other books that you would like to shine a light on? Maybe other crime novels, or any novel, in fact, that perhaps isn't on the bestseller list yet, but is something that you think more readers should read?
An author that I was put onto by another author called Dominic Nolan. So, I mean, Dominic's the first thing. So, if you haven't read any books by Dominic Nolan, then read Vine Street or White City. White City is my favourite. But he pointed me in the direction of an Australian author called Gary Disher. And I really, yeah, so I read Bitterwash Road. I really enjoyed it. I like crime books that have something different about them. And the advantage of Australian crime books is they're set in Australia and they feel quite, it feels like a familiar environment, but different enough that it's sort of all original and fresh. And yeah, Bitterwash Road is the first in a series. And I really enjoyed that one. I loved it.
Yes, excellent. Thank you very much. Now, aside from writing, what do you enjoy? Where do you find joy in life? I think you mentioned there's not too much that you do. What do you love?
I like getting out there and meeting readers and doing all that sort of author stuff that is a real privilege to be able to do. But I love it when I can just come home, have a very simple life. So I can run the dog or walk the dog and then like hang out with my son, hang out with my husband and just be at home and pottering basically. And I sort of I like it when life is quiet and I get to just hang out with my family and I do love writing and reading. So yeah, when I can if we have a quiet weekend when like my son and my husband will just be playing computer games and I'll be in a corner with the dog reading a book, I think that's kind of perfect.
Oh, lovely. And it's such a contrast to your novels, isn't it? You write about kind of big, loud, exciting, dramatic things happen, but you'd like to be kind of
Yeah.
quiet in a corner.
I like the quiet life. I'm too old to be doing exciting things nowadays. So, I often think I've missed my calling and
Never too
that
old.
I should have been a police officer, but I'm definitely too old to go back and change my career. So yeah, this is what I
No,
really
you're too
love.
good as a crime writer.
Thank you.
And what are you working on now? What are you going to produce to terrify me next time?
Yeah. So I have just finished copy edit. So my next Sam Holland book is called The Killer in Room 5. And the premise is there's a guy called Joe and he is in a private psychiatric hospital where he's been for the past month. And he calls the police, or the nurse calls the police, because he's had a dream or a hallucination where he's killed someone. And at the same time, somebody has died in exactly that same way on the outside. So the question is,
That's so chilling.
yeah, the question is, how does he know? And he can't possibly have done the murder. So who is talking to him and who has done the murder on the outside? So yeah, that's the premise of the Killer in Room 5. So it's a fun exploration of what's going on in Joe's brain.
Now I'm so intrigued. I'm going to have to read it and I'm going to have to sleep with the lights on again.
Yeah. I wanted it to be more sort of creepy than full-on
Okay.
violent stabby. There is some violent stabby bits in it, but I wanted it to have more of a sort of creepy feeling, so that you want to keep your lights on. You know, when you read like Woman in Black or all these like classic ghost stories, I wanted it to be slightly this sort of creepy, unknowable thing because she goes
like sort of Edgar Allan Poe style.
Yeah, so
which also
the police officer,
even that I read some of those at university, and then I thought, oh, I haven't brushed my teeth yet. I was like, I'm not going in that hallway now.
No, not going to the toilet. Yeah, absolutely. I was sort of, and at one point the police officer, to try and get to the bottom of it, goes and stays in the psychiatric hospital with him. So and that's those bits I wanted to be really creepy.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
And what a way to start the year. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you've enjoyed Ray of Light, please do like and subscribe and come say hello. I'm at Eleanor Ray Books across all the social channels. Sam's latest, The Countdown Killer, is out now, and I highly recommend it for a thrilling read. And if you need something soothing after all that bloodshed, maybe try one of my books. See the Stars is out in paperback next month and is all about finding hope and wonder when life goes off course. And I promise you, there isn't a serial killer in sight. So thank you very much, everyone, and see you next time for more tips on reading, writing, and happiness.